Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. Today we're gonna analyze our novel, that is White Sargasso Sea. I hope you enjoy it. So let's start with content. We will talk about historical background of colonialism and slavery, law and justice, and finally, women's rights. First of all, historical backgrounds of colonialism. Colonialism, what does it mean? It is defined as control by one power over a dependent area or people. So, colonialism is the political, social, economic, and cultural domination of a territory and its people by a foreign power. The age of modern colonialism began about 16th century following the European discoveries of a sea road around African southern coast and of America also. Colonizer countries, Spain and Portugal, they are started colonize in Asian and American continents. Then we will see England and France also. As we said that colonialism is political and economical domination of territory, but is also religious because Church sent missionaries to convert the indigenous people, so to make them Christian. Colonialism and White Sargasso Sea. White Sargasso Sea is a work of postcolonial fiction. It's about relationship between a white woman, Antoinette Causeway, and her English husband, Edward Rochester, in a Caribbean islands. Their relationship is set against the backdrop of extreme racial tension in 19th century Jamaica, one being female and colonized, the other being male and colonizer. As we said that Antoinette and Rochester represent colonizing forces because they have servants who are the blacks. Although Antoinette was born in Ireland, she was still superior than the blacks, and her husband Rochester is from the start a figure of colonial aggression, a white man with an air of superiority and sense of disapproval for non-English culture. Slavery. We know that throughout the 7th century and 18th centuries, people were kidnapped from the continent of Africa, forced into slavery in the American colonies. Some slaves from Africa were sent to European countries like Italy, Spain, and Portugal. But the biggest market emerged in the New World, so America continent. They were forced to work as servants and labor production of crops such as tobacco and cotton, and also the imported one is gold. About 10 million slaves were imported from Africa, and we know this as slave trade. Slaves were trying to escape, of course, and people who escaped were called marine communities. And finally, these communities successfully resisted recapture and formed their own autonomous groups. Yes, let's look at the slavery in White Sargasso Sea. White Sargasso Sea takes place right after the Emancipation Act of 1833 was enacted. Although slavery has ended, there is still a lot of tension going around the sea. Former slaves were still considered to be lower than the Europeans, because in the novel we see that whites are masters, blacks are servants, such as Antoinette is master and Christophany or Tia or Emily is servant. Although the Emancipation Act has freed the slaves by the time of Antoinette's trialhood, compensation has not been granted to the island's black population. They are still servants, they are still working for white people, and they are still lower than them. Another topic in our novel is law and justice. On page 24 there is a quotation: "No more slavery, she had to law, these new ones have ladder of the law. Same thing, they got magistrate, they got fine, they got jailhouse and train gang, they got thread machine to mash up people's feet. New ones worse than old ones. More coming, that's all." In this scene, Cristofano reflects on the continuing racial injustice that exists on the island. Although the blacks were no longer enslaved, they were still treated as inferior citizens. They were still working for white people. Also, Mr. Mason, an Englishman and Annie's husband, believe that the blacks are harmless because they are too damn lazy to be dangerous. The Englishmen still look down at the blacks and had no respect. Yes, they are lazy because they are working for white people, for Mr. Mason. There is a quotation from Antoinette: "Justice, I heard the word. It's a cold word. I tried it out. I wrote it down several times, and always it looked like a damn cold light to me. There is no justice. My mother, whom you all talk about, what justice did she have? My mother sitting in the rocking chair, speaking about dead horses and dead grooms, and a black devil kissing her sad mouth." This suggests us that not only justice for the blacks and slaves but also for women, because in the novel we see that even if you are a white woman, you are not equal to a white man. You are just superior than the blacks, not a white man. So law and justice theme is not only about the blacks and slaves, it's also for women. Yes, finally, our topic is women's rights. A colonial woman was expected to be subservient to her father until she married, because at this point she became subservient of her husband. In this time, women continued to have very few rights. They were not allowed to vote and lost most control of their property in marriage. They couldn't talk about literature, politics, or anything else because their husbands see them as they cannot think, they cannot talk, they cannot know anything about politics or literature. So that's why they lost their control of their property in marriage. And they could not divorce, and even single women couldn't make contracts sue anyone or be sued, at least until the late 18th century. In Why Sargasso Sea, in our novel, we see that Mr. Rochester is described as a man who wants to stay in control and keep his patriarchal and colonial position of power, while Antoinette is described as an innocent being who seeks love and appreciation. Antoinette is active at first. She tries to resist her husband's domination by arguing with him, but at the end, his oppression makes her more and more passive. And finally, as you remember, I read this quotation in the Law and Justice part, where I think it's also about women's rights. It shows us being a white woman doesn't mean you are superior than men, because men are always at the top. In the novel, yes, Antoinette can be superior than workers, servants, and black people, but not than Rochester, because Rochester is superior than her. That's why I think women's rights are neglected in our novel. And my presentation is finished. I hope you enjoyed, guys. Thanks for watching.